During the month of Ramadan, Muslims are expected to fast between the hours of sunrise and sunset, foregoing food, drink, and sexual relations so as to become closer to God. But it seems that Allah is further away from some Muslims than others, depending on where they live in the world and what the season is. Apparently, Allah demands life-endangering levels of devotion if you live near the North or South Pole in summertime, but takes almost no interest from the same Muslims during the winter. In contrast, Muslims living by the equator grab Allah's attention an equal amount no matter what the time of year is. What could account for this variation in the terms of the Islamic contract? Is Allah playing some unfathomable game? Does he have a valid but godly reason beyond human comprehension? Or did he just forget that the world is round? Muhammad is said to have been born in Mecca and spent most of his life in the region that is now modern-day Saudi Arabia. The average number of daylight hours in Mecca drops to just under 10 hours and 50 minutes during the winter solstice in December and rises to just over 13 hours and 26 minutes during the summer solstice in June. This is a variation of a little over 2.5 hours of daylight throughout the year. Islamic tradition states that Muhammad never travelled south enough to even reach the equator and never travelled further north than Syria. While the variation of sunlight is wider in a Syrian city like Damascus at nearly 4.5 hours throughout the year, we can still safely be assured that the founder of Islam never experienced the perpetual dark of the Arctic winter, nor its midnight sun during the summer. You can forgive Muhammad for believing that the rules of fasting between sunrise and sunset will pose little problem for Muslims to follow through the changing seasons. However, what about Allah? Surely he knew the world he had supposedly made was an oblate spheroid and not the flat earth that would have facilitated his demands for Ramadan. Was this some trick or punishment on his followers for migrating to Scandinavia? Why did Allah not leave instructions to explain what to do for future generations of Muslims, who he must have known would travel further north and further south? This is, after all, no trivial matter. This is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, an Islamic duty to which the failure to adhere could determine whether Muslims will exchange that frozen Arctic circle for an eternity in a far warmer place. Muslims have never been able to answer this question. Of course, there is a long history of Islamic scholarship attempting to grapple with this question. According to some stuff I read on the internet, as far back as the year 921, Ibn Fadlan, an envoy of the Abbasid Caliphate, visited the Bulgars in what is now Russia. He documented the problem as such. The days are very long and remain so for a certain part of the year, and the nights are short. Then the nights lengthen and the days shorten. For the next 900 years, other such eagle-eyed observations about the problem were made by Muslim travellers. Though contributing to the vast body of Islamic wisdom that day lengths vary more in the north, nothing was actually offered to address the problem, presumably to the detriment of every Muslim soul living in a cold climate. It seems communities in the regions did come up with their own solutions since they haven't all starved out, but documentation of these historical solutions does seem to be absent. In today's world, it seems to be dealt with in one of 3 ways. Believers who were fasting during the summer months of the far north either used the timings of the sun in Mecca, they use the timings of the sun from a city or region closer by, but further south so it's less arduous, or they fast some other time of year. In the related case of fasting in space, where the International Space Station experiences a sunrise every 92 minutes, Muslim astronauts have been told that they can adhere to the sunlight hours of the last place that they were standing on Earth. This is all well and good and practical, but there is a fundamental problem. This is just making shit up. Nowhere in Islamic scripture does it allow for these kinds of exemptions or exceptions, to just decide to use some other place's sunlight hours or some other time to fast, unless you were ill or pregnant. This is nothing other than Muslims changing the words of Allah, changing the instructions he gave for one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which is supposed to be against the rules. Or perhaps they really do believe that Allah simply forgot that the world is round.